Ladies and gentlemen, a very good evening to you all. Welcome to the next CIC event, which we hope will take you to the moon, the stars, and bring you back safely to Chennai. As many of you are aware, it is going to be almost 1 year since CIC was started, and it has been a fabulous year of learning and sharing. It was on 29th of July 2016 that we started this journey with Mr. Nandan Nilekani speaking to a packed audience. At CIC, we aspire to be a spa for the mind and the soul, and a place where achievers of today, of yesteryears, and of tomorrow will meet, interact, and debate and discuss transformative ideas. We believe we are well on our way to do that. Of course, we have had our own set of challenges, and we are trying to address them and make sure the members have a delightful experience. CIC is proud to bring to you all today a very interesting session, a mission to the moon fueled by ambition. In the year 1962, India started its first tryst with space. Like many other areas, our ambition was way ahead of our capabilities. We were questioned by many a nation why a newly independent country requires a space program. It may have taken us 50 years, but with the current achievements of ISRO, I believe we are well on our way to stardom in space. We have with us today two extraordinary individuals who are epitomes for such ambition. They have proved to the world that their ambition and zeal to achieve something extraordinary has no bounds. One has been there and done that, and is a world-renowned IT entrepreneur. And the second has managed to change mindsets and is on his way to scaling his peak. Mr. Lakshmi Narayan, he does not need an introduction to this audience, and I certainly cannot attempt to do justice to his achievements. He is one of our own and a founding director of CIC, co-founder of Cognizant Technology Solutions, credited to have built a company which was one of the fastest to climb the $10 billion mark in revenue, is a tech veteran of 30 years in the IT industry and has worked with the other tech major TCS, a savvy investor and a member of the Chennai Angels, and truly an angel to many a startup, chairman of the ICT Academy, trustee at the Chennai Mathematical Institute, board of governors at the Tyagaraja School of Management, board member at the NSDC. He has done his MBA from the Indian Institute of Science, very socially minded, supports many a good cause, and an avid Chennaiite. Give him a big hand. Rahul Narayan, an IIT Delhi alumni, a first-generation IT and tech entrepreneur, and COO of a company called Agnesian Technologies Private Limited. He's also the co-founder of Axiom Research Labs Private Limited, and as a lead member of the team, has had the audacity to launch a company which is privately funded and has the goal to land a spacecraft on moon. Part of Team Indus, which has secured independent tech validation by a panel of international experts, won the milestone $1 million USD from Google Lunar X Prize, partnered with the French agency CNES. In less than 10 years, they built a 100-member space engineering team, including multiple ISRO experts, created an integrated design and development facility in Bangalore, and he calls himself Fleet Commander of the Team Indus. So I will request Rahul to come forward, make a presentation, and then we will have a freewheeling conversation with both these speakers. Rahul?
Thank you, Rajiv. I appreciate the introduction and immediately following Lakshmi. I think that you're putting me at a very, very high level. Thank you, everyone. It's a privilege for me to be here. Thank you for coming by and taking time to listen to our story. So great. Thank you so much. The brief introduction that Rajiv provided gives you a sense of what is it that we're going to get into today. So this is a little bit of story about how Team Indus came about, what was our inspiration, a little bit about how far we've come, and we end with potentially what is it that you can do to be part of this mission, to enable this mission. I'm joined here by my colleague Shilika. She'll be talking you through some part of the presentation as we go along. So I already spoke about what my influences were. Just very quickly going through this, and this is a little bit of a life journey of what influences people as they're growing up. Can I have the clicker, please? Thank you. So you guessed that right, Star Trek. That's the 80s. That was DD1. Cosmos, you got that right as well. Closer to time, any idea what influences people, what influences kids as they're growing up? Any guesses on that? No, that's not Star Wars. That's what influences kids today, right? Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos and sending rockets up and then bringing them down. So yeah, that's a little bit about what influences people from popular culture, what we see going on in the background and how we get influenced. So just a little bit about what I was seeing growing up. Any ideas what this is? You've seen my presentation before, obviously. Yes, so that's in Bangalore. It takes a lot of time to get to Old Airport Road, but that's in Bangalore, ISAC, and that's scientists assembling Mangalyaan. So much closer to home, much closer to time is what you're looking at. So all this is what was going through my mind as I was thinking about getting the presentation to work. When I came across this international competition, the competition is sponsored by Google. It's organized by XPRIZE, and the target is the moon. So that's why the name of the competition is Google Lunar XPRIZE. It has two rules. Rule number 1 states that you have to land on the moon, move 500 meters, and send back evidence that you've done so. Rule number 2 states you have to do it while you're 90% privately funded. So this is not about sending a paper to DST, asking for 500 crores. If it doesn't work out, you send another paper saying it didn't work out. It's about trying to raise money the startup way, the scrappy way, and raise just the amount of money that you need in order to make this product happen, in order to make this program happen. So that was the starting challenge when I started out. We started in early 2011. Started off as my background is software products and services. Software guys here? Not Lakshmi sir. Anybody else? So if you had an interview on Monday and it's a Friday, what would you say if you were trained in C and you were gonna have an interview in Python? You're gonna roll up your sleeves and say, I'm gonna study through the weekend and Monday I'm gonna crack the interview. Every software guy does exactly that. And that's exactly what I was telling myself when I looked at this challenge and said, ek weekend lagega. We will, do a Hello World program at the end of it. At the end of 2 years, we'll launch for the moon. That's it. As a software guy, that's how you think of program plans. And say in 24 months, that's way too much time. We don't need that much time. We don't need that much money. And we'll be able to pull something off. So that's the innocence with which I got into this. Having said that, it's already 6.5 years. We spent way too much money. We've taken a whole lot of time to get where we come. And it's still 6 to 9 months out. So that's the real story of trying to do engineering when you are a software person prior to that. But where does all this begin? I mean, and why should anybody get up and say, let's try and do something that the Americans have done before? I'm just assuming that most of us here are usual classic middle class. And if there were a UN award for the most cynical middle class in the world, it would be given to us, India, right? Absolutely, right? So everybody's cynical, saying, "Yeah, this doesn't happen, this doesn't work, that doesn't work." We, as middle class, we're the ones who complain the most, and we think it's somebody else's job to fix things, it's somebody else's job to do things. Why isn't there a Facebook out of India? Why isn't there a Google out of India? But there are moments wherein you think and say, "Can I be that Facebook or Google?" Nothing to suggest that we're building a Facebook or Google here, but it's the same spirit. So when I came across this competition, I kept asking the question, why isn't somebody doing it? I'm just going to use a couple of random names here. Why isn't L&T doing this? And as I said, just random names. When you're thinking in your mind, you come up with random. Why isn't L&T doing this? Why isn't Godrej Aerospace doing it? Why isn't anybody doing something like this? It's such a fantastic competition. There are 30 international teams there. Why isn't there any team from India? And then you look around and you start complaining, why isn't anybody doing it? At some point you have to stop and say, I'm going to get up and do it. So that was my small moment of rolling up my sleeves and saying, if I go to Wikipedia, I find out how do you get to the moon, we should be able to put something together. It won't take 2 days, it will take a couple of years, but we should be able to figure it out. So the defining moment for me was to say, I'm going to be the change. I'm going to try and see how far we can go. And if it fails, so be it. We'll come back and do something else. So for me, the genesis or the moment was to come up with that point and then say, not going to wait for anybody else, not going to be afraid of failure, and going to move forward from there. What is the challenge that we're trying to solve over here? So I usually do a pop quiz here, but the answer is on the screen, so not going to do that right now. The Russians and Americans landed on the moon in the 60s and 70s. The Chinese landed in 2013. They're going to land again before the end of this year, and again next year, and 2 times in 2019. That's it. 3 countries have ever landed on the moon, and we're talking about nation states putting billions of dollars behind these kind of programs to land something on the surface of the moon. Only the Americans put human beings there and brought them back. Other people have landed robotic missions on the moon. So our small little company is trying to do exactly that at a slightly smaller scale. So we're much smaller mission by way of the size of the spacecraft, the size of the rover, and so on and so forth. But that's the complexity, that's the engineering feat that we're trying to accomplish here. Started off 6 years ago, quite like any other startup. You start off on the back of the envelope with friends, and you take 3 assumptions, and basis those 3 assumptions, everything seems to fall into place, and you should be able to solve this in a very little money and in a couple of years' time. As I said, it's 6 years since. We've now grown to over 120 people. We're based out of Bangalore. We're based out of Jakkur in Bangalore. This is just before you enter the main city. Our secret sauce has been the fact that as a startup, you start for resources, but then you need to be able to find the right kind of skill to deliver the right product. So our secret sauce has been, we got 24 retired ISRO scientists who work with us on a regular basis. They're the architects of what we build, and rest of them are -1 to +5 years out of engineering college. So we married experience with energy, and we've created a magical potion over here. That's what allows this 120-person team to build technology, which usually is stuff that space agencies, government agencies do on their own. A couple of years ago, we won, we had an independent jury sent by the organizers, and we won $1 million as a milestone prize. The idea was they would validate what we've done, look at the maturity of our technology, look at our risk mitigation strategy, look at our supply network, and validate and say, is this in the right direction? If they followed this trajectory, will they go all the way to the moon? So we won $1 million there. CNES, the French space agency, has for the first time tied up with a non-European private entity, and they're flying cameras on board our mission. The French haven't been to the moon. They're not getting to the moon before 2020 or 2021, according to their plans. And they think this is the way in which they could send one part or collect some data of the transit from Earth to moon. University of Colorado Boulder. Anybody familiar with Boulder? Okay. So University of Colorado Boulder has LASP. LASP predates NASA. It's a lab which has been building software for over 65 years today. And when they looked at what we were doing, they were more than happy to offer that ground control software to us for our mission. So that's a little bit of validation of folks who looked at what we were doing and felt that we were going in the right direction, and therefore offered us their support as we went forward. Incidentally, in the competition, there is a Japanese team, and they did not have a launch vehicle, they did not have a spacecraft, they only had a rover, something that can move on the surface of the moon. They had no way of getting to the moon. So we signed up to take the Japanese with us on our spacecraft and deliver them to the surface of the moon, after which they start their mission. Won't be fun if we do this without technology. So a little bit of technology, just bear with me on the next 3 or 4 slides. So this is what we're talking about. We're building a rover. That's something which is capable of traversing 500 meters on the surface of the moon. Any idea how fast this can move? Any idea what is the traversal record for interplanetary traversal? 10, 11 kilometers. Mars rovers in 10 years. 11 kilometers in 10 years. That's what the Mars Pathfinder mission took to travel 10 kilometers, took 10 years. So this is slightly faster. This moves at about 1 centimeter a second. To cover 500 meters, it's going to take us 3 days, take us 72 hours. That's how fast we're moving. I know we complain about roads in Bangalore and roads in Bombay and Chennai, but this is really unknown terrain. This is a semi-autonomous rover, and it moves at 1 centimeter per second. So that's the speed with which this would happen on the surface of the moon. The big part of the engineering, so this is once you get to the moon. The big part of the engineering is how do you get to the moon. So to get to the moon, you need a spacecraft inside which this rover would travel, and that's the most complex part of engineering that we have built or spent most of our energies behind. So that's the spacecraft that we have. I have another slide on that, so we'll talk about it there. The launch vehicle is not very clearly visible here, but this is the 4th stage or the nose cone of PSLV XL. How many satellites does PSLV launch in the February launch? Anybody remember that? 104, exactly. Right number. In this case, it can carry only one payload, which is our spacecraft, because it needs to push us much further out than what it pushes a normal satellite or one of those small satellites. So it's a dedicated PSLV XL launch. We got the whole rocket to ourselves to jump through quite a few hoops to get to that point. So this is a view of our spacecraft. That's what you're looking at there is an isometric view. What you see as those boxes are boxes where the payloads go. So one of the payloads is our rover, the other payload is the Japanese rover, and then we have a whole bunch of these interesting student experiments that we carrying with us, which are marked out by those green boxes. What you see here is the top view of the spacecraft. You can see the 2 tanks. You can see all the sensors which are used for the flight, transit between Earth and Moon. What you see here is the bottom view where you can actually look at the main engine. You can look at 4 clusters of 4 smaller engines which allow the spacecraft to control its attitude or orientation in space. That's how we go to space. So once we launch from Sriharikota, people familiar with? Outside Andhra Pradesh, very close from Chennai. It's a 15-minute ride for us once we take off from Sriharikota, and PSLV then releases the spacecraft and goes away. It releases us at the periapsis of the G1 orbit. The G1 orbit is about 800 kilometers by 70,000 kilometers. If we didn't do anything, we'd stay in that orbit. But that's where the spacecraft turns on. It takes anything between 3 to 4 weeks, 21 to 28 days, for the spacecraft to, increase its apogee, do a translunar injection, get captured around the moon, do four orbits around moon, and then finally come to the point from which the descent can begin. So that's how you do. It's not the most optimum, neither is it, it's not the most frugal way of doing this. There are faster ways of doing it, there are slower ways of doing it. For us, this was the best trade-off that we could find when we looked at the resources available with our spacecraft and launch vehicle. That's a look at our landing site. So that's the landing site. It's a Mare Imbrium in the northwestern hemisphere. Mare is a dried sea. It's a flat sea. It's about the size of Europe. So that whole landing zone is about the size of Europe, and we've picked a spot which is in the same zone where the Russians and the Chinese landed recently. It's a very flat surface. It's relatively easy to land. We got a tough ask on hand. We don't want to make the landing any more complicated. So what you see here is the condition of the moon when we arrive or get captured around the moon. We have to stay around the moon till it is dawn on the landing site. So there are about 4 days that we'll be orbiting the moon before we begin our descent over there. Ground station. So how do you talk to the spacecraft? The spacecraft is moving towards the moon. It's left Earth's orbit. It's going to get captured around the moon. So we need to listen to what the spacecraft is saying, so that's telemetry data. We need to be able to command the spacecraft, which is telecommands, and we need to do this 24/7. The moon is locked. It's locked with respect to the Earth, but the Earth itself is rotating on its own axis. So Bailalu, anybody use the Mysore road from Bangalore? Seen those large dishes outside on top of a hill in a very quiet area? It's radio quiet, and that's Bailalu. It has a 30-meter dish, which is a deep space antenna, which can listen to signals from a source which is more than 100,000 kilometers away from Earth. So that's one of the deep space networks that we're going to use. It's ISRO's facility. Almost exactly 180 degrees apart on the globe is LA, and outside that we have a NASA Goldstone facility which has the same infrastructure. Between these two ground stations, we will be able to speak and listen to the spacecraft 24/7. We do have backup stations in Madrid, we have something in Bayak, and we have something in Australia for specific maneuvers and specific commands and backup in case it's needed.
I'm sure some of this sounded like rocket science to some of you. It actually is rocket science. Our next session will, while this was all the engineering, our next session is going to be a little more about how can the rest of India be part of this moon mission. But I'm sure you have some tech questions. So before we move to the next session, we'll take 5 or 6 questions on anything that you've heard now. And if you don't have enough questions, we'll do a pop quiz. Where is Bayak?
On Indonesian island.
Anyone else? Yes, please.
You said there's a trade-off on the launch. The idea is to get something to the moon and bring it back or speed it.
One way. Complex enough, expensive enough.
You're throwing the rover, or you're going to actually take the...
No. So I'll just quickly go back to that slide. Yeah. No, the previous one. Yeah. So what you saw over here are the payloads. So this is one of the rovers. This is our rover over here. This is the Japanese rover over here. What you see marked out as A, B, C, D, E, F, G are payloads. So it's a spacecraft which is responsible for doing all the different orbits, for capturing into the lunar orbit, for sending data back, communication, solar panels, and so on and so forth. So these are the solar panels here. There's communication, there's IMU on board, there's navigation, there are star sensors. So all that is the function of the spacecraft, and it's a full spacecraft which lands on the surface, and then the payloads are activated.
I'll just add a little trivia there. This is a one-way mission. The benefit of doing a one-way mission is not to clutter the moon, but when we signed up for this competition, the organizers made us sign a whole load of documents to say you can't land anywhere near a NASA landing. Any ideas why? Why can't we land near? Yes. Signals could get interrupted, but those have all defunct now. Anyone else? Because the 2-kilometer radius around any artifact is sovereign American territory. So when we land there, we have sovereign Indian territory, where our spacecraft is. Sorry, you had a question.
I want to know, is there a broader purpose for this mission, or just to land on the moon?
So for us, and I can give you my personal answer. My personal answer is that for me the deeper meaning is, stop looking at outside world to do stuff for you. And if there is a challenge to go to the moon, we're going to do the engineering in-house, build the spacecraft and land it on the moon. For me, that is the deeper purpose here. We have a whole bunch of scientific experiments which we're flying with us, and there's data that will be collected, including multispectral data, including dust characterizations data. All that would be put into the open source domain. So that's what is going to happen with the science. For me, the motivation, the interest, and the purpose was engineering to be able to do something so complex and do it out of it.
Will you talk later about the economics of the mission, or is that?
No,
yes,
go ahead.
That's why you're here.
Yeah. I'll just add there, while the motivation was engineering and to do something, I personally believe the impact of this is far more than that. It sends a story out into this country to say, you could be regular folks and aim to do something extraordinary and still have the possibility to do it out of this country. So it's a byproduct. It didn't start with that, but I think the impact would be huge on this country. Sorry, sir.
What's the degree of collaboration with ISRO on this, considering that they've done the Chandrayaan and other missions also?
Huge, and I get nervous before all my presentations, so I missed that phrase over there. Very clearly, if I had to go do this from a country which did not have a space program as mature as ISRO, not possible. So this very clearly is standing on the shoulders of giants. The ecosystem, the experts, the people who have made mistakes, learn from those mistakes at very expensive mistakes at that. We just get to start at the top of that heap. So that is the first and foremost. I didn't point out Dr. Kasturi Rangan. He's been our Guru Dronacharya all along. He's never associated with us formally, but without his guidance, I don't think we'd have managed to come as far as we've come. So that's the people part of the connect. The next part of the connect is the ecosystem which we use. So interestingly, the motors that we use on our rover are motors that are being manufactured for some or the other mission that ISRO is doing. So the ecosystem, so to say, the aluminum that we use, the bonding of the aluminum that we use is something that NAL does all the time. So that ecosystem is something that a private agency entity could never build for itself. It takes years and years to build a whole supply network. So, 50 years of ISRO has ensured we had that supply network. Then infrastructure. Infrastructure is we need, and I don't know if you'll have time today, but I can show you the vibration test that we put the spacecraft through in order to qualify it. So this is going to experience about 7 Gs of vertical load when it takes off on the rocket. In order to test it, we have to test it at 150%, so we have to give it 10 Gs load. The way we do it is shake it at 100 Hertz. So at each sine curve, when it changes, the spacecraft experiences a similar load. That 16-ton shaker does not exist anywhere in India. Nobody else needs that kind of a load. Only ISRO has it. So that's been a great supporting factor. And last but not the least, I would say that for a developing country, for a team of non-aerospace guys coming from a developing country, it was tough in the first couple of years to stand on any international forum and say, we'll be doing this. But over the last 2 to 3 years, everything that ISRO has done, I think we'll be basking in the reflected glory there. So when Mangalyaan happened, when these multiple satellite launches happened, when 3 launches happened in 6 weeks' time, I think each time that such a thing happens, not only are we exceptionally proud, but there's reflected glory on the whole private ecosystem, or especially space ecosystem in India.
See, this is a great ambition and a big challenge you have taken. Generally young people take challenges, the earthly challenges. This seems to be a cosmos challenge. What triggered you to take up this challenge? I cannot imagine myself to take up such a challenge, even if I had, the age and other things to support me. What is it that drove you personally to do this?
Ma'am, I spoke about 3 assumptions that we made, and basis those 3 assumptions, as a software guy, we were able to finish this in 2 years. Very few software people here, so I can continue using that example. We could finish this in 2 years. I assure you, within the first 3 months of embarking on the journey, all 3 of those assumptions were proven wrong. So there was this whole thing about a wrong assumption, giving us the courage to set off on the right journey. The assumptions were all proven wrong. We've come 6 years after that. There's still a distance to be covered. But looking back, I don't regret any of that. So maybe it was a wrong assumption that allowed me to take that leap, but no regrets.
So the question is, what made you even take the leap? Forget the assumptions.
Because I could do it. I couldn't do it in a year, but I thought I could do it in 2.
Doing it comes later.
Yes.
The challenge comes first.
What made you
you need to know what the challenge is. You need to know what the challenge is. So if it is a marathon, if you think you can do it in 6 hours, would you take it up? But if you suddenly realize, no, it's going to be 26 hours, would you take it up?
So for me, it was slightly different. I came on a little later, a couple of years later. And for me, and I was a person who did not have a science background, did not enjoy space or science at all. But for me, it was the fact that these were an ordinary set of people. And that time there were like 4 or 5 people in the team, that's it. But an ordinary set of people who had an incredibly audacious dream and were actually making it happen. And for me, that was such a big thing that I said, I have to make it happen with them. That's what took me in.
Join up later.
Later, but what pushed it, Rahul? You've not given an adequate answer.
I was able to solve the problem and I thought I could get it done in a couple of years. That was just the starting point.
We also have a bunch of questions at the end. So
Yeah, so
Yes,
we'll move on.
yes.
So last question and we'll move on. Last one.
Yeah, let me just follow up on that question. How difficult was it to attract talent?
I have a usual answer, so let me give you the usual answer. Everything you have two problems, right? It's a catch-22 for any startup. Where are the resources to make progress? To find the resources, you need progress, right? So that's a catch-22 that every startup faces. We faced a catch-222, which is before that, people would ask, "What are you smoking?" Before the catch-22 comes, what we saw. So that was a lighter note. But I think if you reached out, if you were true with what you wanted to do, that honesty shows up, that sincerity shows up, that we don't know 90% of what's going to happen, but we know 10% of it, and probably this is the trajectory, we'll figure out everything else later on. So it was tough to find the first few people. In fact, we didn't have full-time employees for the first entire year. We started hiring only in the next year. But once we got the first set of people, once we got our first set of full-time experts in, it was relatively easier after that.
I think we've been very, very lucky. We've managed to attract the most passionate lot. To come and be a part of this, you have to be slightly crazy and you have to be completely overwhelmed by your own passion to do this. And we've been lucky to attract those kind of folks. So in the beginning, while there was no credibility, it was more of, in the end, saying, I have to be part of this team to make it happen. We'll take the rest of the questions later, and we'll just move on a little and say, that was the engineering. But what can we do to make this mission part of every individual in India? So this is the first time that you have private enterprise that's doing a space mission, which means we are not shrouded with, we don't have to be shrouded with by security and secrecy. We have no national act or a patriotic act or anything that inhibits us from sharing this mission. And therefore we think this is called Har Indian Ka Moonshot. This is something that represents all the people out there who are either driven by the fact that this will put the tricolor on the moon, or driven by the fact that India is seen competing at the highest levels of technology against the rest of the world and could come out front, driven by the fact that this could just lead to an entire new industry and the birth of a new India that we see where high-end products come out of India. So this is something that could attract everybody. And this was what I was saying earlier, is that the potential of this is not just on landing. It would be a really small scope if we looked at the mission just as landing. But we're looking at this mission to say, can we pay it forward? Can we get students, the next generation, the next 3-4 generations excited in STEM, excited about space, and get them to be a part of this? The benefit we have is we can make this experiential. We can get folks to come in, experience it, see success, and then be able to get inspired. Rahul talked about Dr. Kasturi Rangan, and I just remember a nugget he shared, which I was sharing with you earlier today, Venki. Is Dr. Kasturi Rangan was talking the other day, and he said, when I dreamt about a big dream of going to the moon, it took me 12 years to make that dream come true. Here you're taking it to students who can dream today, and in 1 year, see their dream come true. That creates the next generation of change makers and ideators and innovators. So the first thing we did was to take this to students. We have lots of programs. The first one is Moonshot Cadets. It's a broad-based program where we take students through the science, the technology, get them to experience some of the moon mission, and then pick up a handful of them who are the most excited, who are the most passionate, and who are the brightest, and give them an immersive learning on the software, on the technology that we do. Lab to Moon was a project that we launched last year. So we said, could we challenge students across the globe to come up with an idea or a design and build a prototype that could go towards building sustainability on the moon? And if so, can we fly it aboard our spacecraft and actually test it on the moon? And would that technology come back and help mankind? So we put this competition together, expecting 200 teams to at least register. We had to stop it at 3,000 teams because we couldn't deal with more of them. We had an international jury who looked at it, and an international jury which had Dr. Kasturi Rangan, the ex-chairman of the European Space Agency and astrophysics professor from Yale University, who looked at these 3,000 applicants and brought it down to 25. These folks built their prototypes, and then we flew them down to Bangalore in front of this jury, and the jury was supposed to select one prototype that could potentially fly to the moon. Dr. Kasturi Rangan pushed back at us to say there are 8 which could impact mankind. We'd like you to fly 8 of these prototypes. Youngest of this is a 15-year-old who's doing something with cyanobacteria. So a 15-year-old who conceptualized an experiment, in 6 months got selected, and in another 8 months will see it tested on the moon, and will get data back and do research on that. So the potential of this was hugely impactful. We have 2 more programs that we're running. So this is we've got students together and said, okay, Lab to Moon is over, can we involve more students to get excited? And we did this only for students in India. So we have students who are now in our office building a lunar CubeSat. This will be the first time in the world that you would have a CubeSat built by students in lunar orbit. I'm sure you've heard about SRM and a few other colleges who've built it, and it's gone around Earth's orbit. This will be the first time that you'd have something in lunar orbit. It'll have a multispectral telescope on it. It will take images. It'll send data back. Another program we run is Moonshot Wheels, and we're going to let you know when it comes to Chennai. This is a pan-India bus that is going from school to school across India, 12 months, 9 states, little over 50,000 children that it will go to. It's going to government schools, and it again takes the moon mission with it. So it has a simulated lunar surface, it has a prototype of the rover, it has a spacecraft, it even has an antenna. So we have these kids in the middle of a small remote place in Gujarat who happened to be there when the International Space Station was flying over. And with the antenna, they could hear the astronauts speak. And that just drove their mind completely off because they couldn't imagine that there were people in the sky they could hear speak. And we teach them weather, how you monitor weather through that, and there's a lot of science in here. So this will come to Chennai, I think, in the month of January. We'll let you all know when it does. None of this could have been possible without folks backing us. Lakshmi sir, we'd like to thank you for being one of our biggest supporters. We have Kiran ma'am, Gopal Nandan, everyone is a supporter of this. And that's what truly makes this Har Indian Ka Moonshot. It's because of the support we've got that we've come this far, which is what enables us to be able to pay it forward and get next generations excited about this. Everyone excited here? Yes? Yes? Who wants to be a rocket scientist? Show of hands. Who wants to experience what it feels to be a rocket scientist? 1, 2, 3, that's it? Nobody else? So we're going to, what we shared right now were programs which involve students. Now we're going to share is how do we invite you to be part of the biggest show on Earth? Any clues? If you had an opportunity to be part of a space mission, what would you like to do? Your hand went up first. What would you like to do?
Track it.
Track it? Okay. Yes, somebody said something. Be at the launch. Anyone else wants to be at the launch? The hands went up a lot faster this time. Exactly, exactly. What else would you like to do? Wear some of the coolest merchandise to say that you're a rocket scientist. In the making, maybe. Not going to reach there, but at least a rocket scientist. How can you be at the launch?
So that's the plan. The plan is that because we can make this mission open, we plan to open up, as of right now, the number is 9. mission operations centers, not one, 9. So there is one in Bangalore where we control the spacecraft. We're going to open 9 remote mission operations centers. Hopefully all of them are going to be in India. Some of them can be outside India. But we need cities to get up and communities get together and say they want to bring that mission operations center to their city.
Can I interrupt for a second? So does Chennai want a command center?
All right.
Are you all going to ensure we get a command center here?
Absolutely. So what do we do? So this is going to be a 3-day affair. This is going to be a 3-day affair at this simulated command center. Day 1 is about explaining stuff. So I'm not sure we will be able to give you live images, but the event of a ground checkout is just before the spacecraft is ready to take off. You have seen this in probably Formula 1 races. There is a systems check, system go, system go, system go. You have all of that. So there's actually a 100-hour countdown to a launch which happens in reality. You see just the last 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. There's actually a 100-hour countdown where every half hour there's a certain set of activities that have to be checked off. So T-1, launch -1 day, is when we call you into this remote operations facility, explain ground checkout. Any images that we allowed to send out of SHAR, we will beam it in here to this facility. So that's explaining the ground checkout. There's something called as a flight readiness review. Once this whole hardware is checked out, then you once again put an independent committee of people who've seen previous missions before, and they review every aspect of how that mission will happen. So this again is launch -1 day. We will let you listen into the flight readiness review. What are the things that are being asked for? What are the checks? What are the balances? What are the contingency maneuvers? We'll have to explain each and every part of it, and we will allow you to listen in to that part. My prediction is it's not going to be AR or VR. It's going to be mixed reality. So my vote goes to Microsoft. They have this fantastic product called HoloLens. Anybody familiar? The younger ones? Yes, absolutely.
Do you have a HoloLens?
It's a little expensive, but hopefully they come out with a retail version that a lot more of us can buy. So what you're looking at here is what NASA JPL did using the images that they beamed back from Mars. So this was a mixed reality walking on Mars along with the Mars rover simulation that they did. We're going to do exactly the same thing for our rover on the surface of the moon. So obviously we're doing this before it has landed, so we're going to show you synthetic surfaces, but we're going to allow about 200 people who are part of this Mission Operations Center to come in and walk alongside this rover on a simulated surface and experience it as mixed reality. That's day 1. Moving on to day 2. Day 2 is about the launch. Screens that are larger than any screen that you've seen before. The whole mission command center. If this remote operation center comes to Chennai, this is what you'll be able to experience it in real time as the world watches. You've probably seen it on Doordarshan, you've probably seen it online, but this is about experiencing it with all the absolute real data out there.
For me, the most important part here is, so you're seeing it on a screen, and like Rahul said, you could be watching it on TV, but this is about the community you're with. It's about the people you're with. It's about the engineers and the scientists sitting there with you, commanding the spacecraft from there. It's about not breathing when the spacecraft launches. It's about not breathing when it separates from the PSLV 15 minutes later. And it's about celebrating as soon as it does. So this is what our command center would do. You are there in the thick of things, actually experiencing it. Would we have live music? Yes. Would we have a lot of extra action? Yes, because you can't watch a screen and the launch all the time. So we'd have a lot of extra things that we could do. One of the things we'd love to do is decode science. So, and I keep quoting Dr. Kasturi Rangan because he's the closest I've had to an idol. When Interstellar first came out, he sat us down and he said, you know, it is based on pure science. It's based on time warps, it's based on quantum physics. I would love to decode that for the rest of the world. Any of you all seen Hidden Figures? So Hidden Figures, when she climbs up and she writes all that stuff down and says, this is why we failed, we'll get one of our engineers who's doing exactly that job for the mission come and decode it for you. So a lot of these kind of activities will constantly happen over those 2 days. We'll have symposiums, we'll have scientists talk, and we'll make it fun with different movies decoded.
So the idea is then, end of the day, it's still, Hollywood is great and that culture, pop culture is great, but then end of the day, it's a real mission. These aren't our screens, these are screens from Interstellar. So this is about the Mars mission that NASA would send. But we're gonna share with you in a far more relatable manner how this mission is happening. You can't see much, but if I could very quickly point out, that's the communication pattern. This is the navigation pattern of how the spacecraft is navigating, what can it see. This is the whole orientation of the spacecraft. So if I went on the terrace of this building and looked towards the spacecraft, how will I see it? It's not as if it's going in one direction, it could be in any different orientation. So the whole popular science of this rocket science is what we will bring out, the 32 such screens where we'll represent data in various format for what is being sent back to us from the spacecraft. So that's going to be a very interesting explained. We will land on the moon only 4 weeks later. So I've just finished day 1 and day 2, so this is about day 28. We're a startup, we take a little more risk than what government agencies take. Our probability of landing today is about 80%. By the time we launch in 6 to 9 months, it'll probably be about 92, 93%. So these are about 1 million simulations that we're running on a model of the spacecraft. And by 92, 93%, as in 92 out of 100 times, that model lands. 8 times it crashes. So this is us introducing errors and so on and so forth. So this is me just giving disclaimers. If you land nahi hua, to, there's a disclaimer saying there's a slight possibility that it doesn't land. But having said that, everything has gone to plan till date. If things continue going to plan, we believe we'll give you an opportunity to witness history, which is the world's first ever privately funded space exploration mission which goes to another planetary body. Once we land there, the idea is that, let's do the next cool thing, which is we'll allow you to drive the rover while it is on the moon. So
This is one of those big boys and big toys things.
and that's going to be fun. And we're going to have each one of these remote operation centers poll and do pop quizzes to figure out who's going to do the next drive of a rover. The drive is divided into 5-meter drives. Each 5-meter drive takes, it's a 1-meter drive. Each 1-meter drive takes 5 minutes to do. So that is what one drive these people who are part of this command center will be able to do.
So we call this command center Moonshot 1. It is our first moonshot. It may not be the first moonshot in the world, but it's the first time that private enterprise is doing a moonshot which is beyond Earth's orbit. We'd love each one of you to be a part of it, and these are the various ways we could be a part of it.
So obviously we're looking for ambassadors, and Lakshmi sir has been a huge ambassador. We're looking for anybody who wants to sign up, go out there, talk about what we're doing, talk about it at your school, at your college, at your office. We're happy to share some collateral with you to help spread the word.
So this was a question that came up earlier to say, are you going to talk about the economics of the whole thing? This is the economics of it. So if, in case you haven't gathered, this is where we pitch that this is an extremely expensive mission. It's not revenue generating, but this is also, as per the rules of the competition, 90% privately funded. We do have a foundation which runs all these programs. So all the education programs that we saw is run by a foundation, and we are eligible for CSR. So if you'd like to come in as an organization and sponsor any of those programs, the foundation is eligible to take CSR funds.
Then we're looking at you being a host city. What does it take to be a host city? We need 200 people to sign up to be part of that mission operations center. We'll build a command center for you here, which would have all of that and be super connected with every other command center. So it's local simply because the launch window itself can move around a little bit, but it's a local command center that you can come to and be part of the mission.
And then after the command center is gone, we'd love to leave a prototype of the rover, which means it's not a model, but it's an engineering prototype. And for each mission, you usually have flight spares, so we will build a flight spare, which means it's space grade, and you can be a part. You can have that in the city. Have it here as a display. You could choose where it goes.
That's it. So that's our mission. We hope we can engage the entire nation. We need the entire nation to be engaged. We hope we can inspire some of them. And with your support, we can go all the way to the moon in less than 12 months from today. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, please. No, we're taking more questions.
There are more questions, sir.
Is SHAR going to be the launch site?
Yes, sir.
So you'll use the same facility that ISRO
Absolutely.
uses? Okay.
Okay, I'll stand and do the questioning, and then I'll open it out for the audience. So, a former Prime Minister of UK, Benjamin Disraeli, once said, "Success is the child of audacity." And now when I was listening to him, I was also thinking of Fauja Singh, who started running a marathon at the age of 80 plus. Now, I would think Rahul is a bit more wackier than that, right, to jump into something like this. But nevertheless, Rahul, what gave you this confidence? The lady here was asking and alluding to you giving a more direct answer to that. What gave you the confidence to say that, okay, I will jump into this project, I will find the people, I will find the money, and I will deliver this?
I'll actually give the same answer as before, which is, well, starting off, I thought this was much, much easier than what it turned out to be. Starting off, I've been a geek all my life, and I've absolutely loved space and science around that. Although software guy, but it was trying to live your own dream. That was it. That was all that it took.
Either you're not telling the full story, or it's just being very.
I'm retaining the real story
I'm going to add
for the
to
book
that.
rights later on.
I think one of the reasons he could take it
Or
up to
somebody
us-
tied your eyes and just pushed you into this and said, okay.
I think one of the reasons was ignorance. If you had any idea what it really took to do a moon mission like this, you wouldn't get into it.
I'd like to come to the rescue of both of them and say why successful vision. You know, if you look at history, Indian history and our space program, started 1960, 61, 62, two key people, Homi Bhabha, Vikram Sarabhai. Two of them, both of them under the tutelage of Sir C.V. Raman. Vikram Sarabhai did his PhD under C.V. Raman. When Homi Bhabha returned from UK, came to Indian Institute of Science as a reader, and Sir C.V. Raman was the director of that institution. And these people were, you know, they were doing some experiments with cosmic rays those days, late 50s. And then they got this grand idea, saying that we must have, at that point in time, I think Vikram Sarabhai was setting up that National Physical Laboratory. They said that this is a program that we must launch. Why couldn't we have capability in the area of space? Why couldn't we have capability in the area of nuclear science? And just these two people, inspired by one Nobel laureate, great support from the government, Department of Atomic Energy took ownership for this entire program, and then it was launched. So it was at that point of time, we can ask them the same question. What gave Vikram Sarabhai that confidence that someday we will reach that best thing? You know, they had an ambition, they had a desire, they had the institutional support, so many research institutions. PIFR was subsequently set up, Bhabha Atomic Research Center was there. Institutional support, Institute of Science, now we have the IITs and so many other institutions. Great researchers, that's working on it. And the second part of that, you know, they've contributed, and today if we are among the top 5 nations globally, both in the area of space launching, maybe, you know, get to intergalactic and stuff, interstellar, and the area of strategic nuclear development as well as nuclear power development. It's because of the leadership that we had then, which is the question that Vishwanathan asked me. Everybody is talking about GST, how complex it is, will we make it? So I wrote a piece for him and said that this is that leadership. We had the political leadership, research institutions, and technical leadership in the form of people, which put us in that orbit. Today we have a lot of things going for us. All the other major experiments that are happening in the area of science, in the area of physics, or in the area of biosciences too. We have contributed significantly to the experiments in CERN, the LHC, the Large Hadron Collider, fundamental basic particle, and the God particle. A LIGO center hopefully will come up in India. That's the laser interferometer, the gravitational theory proof that has been proved, involving people from India. In fact, I think Professor Ramakrishna from IIT Madras is there. There are about 4 or 5 professors from IIT Madras. Professor Arun from Chennai Mathematical Institute have been selected to construct, run, manage this LIGO project. Hopefully it comes here. The neutrino project, India-based neutrino observatory that's coming up in Teni. I still hope it's coming up there. It's all because of the scientific capability that we have. And all these people are dreaming about finding that fundamental particle. And I don't think it is fair for us to ask them the question, how is this going to help the country? Would it eradicate poverty, etc.? These questions were not asked then, when Vikram Sarabhai and Homi Bhabha launched their experiments. Their desires in India was far poorer then. But these are things that we have to do, not for today, but for the future of humanity. That would be my answer.
So, Lakshmi, going back to the theme of today, and especially to inspire some of the younger folks here, is about ambition and audacious goals, right? So going back to your own life, when you started in '94, Cognizant, you obviously would have had some ambitions for the company. And did you ever think it will be a $10 billion business as it, or little over $10 billion business as it is? And for some of us, I mean, little over 90,000 crores. What was your thought process at that point from an ambition point of view?
It wasn't such an ambition. You know, there's step by step in a sustainable way is the way Blue Origin puts it. Amazon says, Jeff Bezos says, I'll do it gradually, step by step in a sustainable way. Whereas Elon Musk is the opposite. I'll go aggressive. He's built the highest payload carrying rockets today, bigger than something that NASA has got. So mine was the Jeff Bezos model. Gradually do it step by step. And we had a lot of good people coming and helping Cognizant, both on the main business as well as in the foundation business. We have Mr. Chandrasekhar, who's running the company now, Mr. N.R. Krishnan, who's part of the foundation, who's supporting many of the research activities that Cognizant funds. So these are things that you think about exactly the same way Rahul must have asked now. Why can't it be me doing it? And if you ask yourself that question, and if you come up with the answer, say, yes, I can be that person. Then you just go over.
Thank you. Rahul, just for the audience's sake and for my own benefit, ISRO sent Chandrayaan-1 to the moon a few years back. Why is your mission different, or what are you doing differently?
So Chandrayaan-1 was, we standing on the shoulders of those giants. Chandrayaan-1 was launched in 2008. It was a 2-year moon orbiting mission. It had an impactor probe on it. So it's a satellite which went around orbit of moon. What we're doing is going a step further, as in we go into orbit and then eventually we actually go and land. Orbiting is relatively easy because if you missed something, you will come back and you can do that again. If the velocity is not correct, the orientation is not correct, you can come back and do it again. There's a landing part which makes it more complex.
Lakshmi, from your point of view, you invest in several ventures. You're looking at new areas. 2 questions. One, do you think space as a key area for business opportunity? And what do you think will such ventures have as an impact in the minds of young people? These are 2 questions, but sort of interconnected from an opportunity point of view for young people here.
I mean, programs like the space program, they're not investment opportunities. Essentially, you can invest for the real long term. If you want your grandchildren to have space travel, maybe you invest in those type of things now, but not for your immediate business. Mine has been just granting to support this type of a program. The reason for doing it is there are so many aspiring minds, so many young minds who are so capable. If there is an opportunity for them to realize their potential, here is one way of showing. Okay, here is an example. you can do it. That's primarily the motivation. Space travel, yes. I mean, there are people who have signed up for space travel. There are, I think, 3 people who have signed up to go to space and come back in Blue Origin spacecraft in the year 2018. Next year, these people start undergoing training from the US. So space travel is potentially a large business, many years. So if people want to invest in this type of venture, they should really, really have a very, very long-term view. For excellent view, yeah.
So Rahul, I suppose sending a rover to the moon is not cheap. So where are you getting the money from, and what are you giving the people back in return? I mean, you obviously have some who write checks for, maybe from the cause point of view. Lakshmi obviously is a person who just believes the cause. But how else does it work for you?
Right, so the full program for us is going to cost us order of magnitude 500 crores. That's the cost of the whole program. There's cost to engineering, there's cost to qualification, there is a big cost to the launch itself. We've broken this up into multiple buckets. One bucket was we raised some money as equity. So we got some equity money, and again, a very, very patient capital which is looking at it from a 15 or a 20-year horizon. So that we got one bucket of money from there. The second bucket was we sold some payload. The reason why we carrying our competition to the moon along with us, whereby potentially they could win the competition, is the fact that it's a commercial deal, so they're paying us money to carry them. In the same way, we are looking at some of these student experiments to be sponsored by corporates. So Kiran and Biocon Foundation has sponsored one of these experiments. We're looking for other corporates who might be interested in sponsoring these experiments. So that's the second bucket through which we get some money. The third bucket is the usual suspects, the sponsors and a whole bunch of people who are interested in putting their logos on the craft itself, more the Formula One strategy of doing it. And the last bucket is these mission operation centers. A lot of you will have to get together and put down some money to bring the mission operation center to Chennai. And we hope 9 such cities do it, and that will give us a little bit of fuel, which would probably bridge the gap to go all the way to the moon.
So if you put that as an offer, what's the kind of an outlay a city has to come up with if you have to be a...
So we're looking at about 5 lakh rupees per seat, and I won't call it seat, it's actually a full package per package, and we're looking at least 200 packages for a city to come alive.
So 200 into 5 lakhs?
Yes.
Okay. So obviously some of them ask these questions about what's the monetary side of it. And obviously there is also lessons to be learned and a possible commercialization and becoming a venture. So in that context, do you have a 5-year horizon after the competition, year 2023? Where would you like to see yourself as Axiom Research, as a company?
On a lighter note, Bangalore is a unique aerospace ecosystem. Within a 50-kilometer radius, you find every global supplier there, from Honeywell to Orbital, ATK, Texas Instruments. The only problem is to traverse 50 kilometers inside Bangalore could take 3 hours at times. It's probably faster for me from Jakku to go to the airport and land in Bombay. So maybe one of the products that we build. So anyway, coming back to a more serious note, I think this has been a story of capability building. As a team, as a unique program management group, as processes that we follow, I think it's very unique to us as a country, especially in the private domain, and globally as well. So we see ourselves as a core aerospace engineering company which can go on, continue solving problems that other people pay money to solve. So that's where we see ourselves going forward.
So do you have a vision as to where you want to see yourself? That is my question. I know currently you're very focused on this competition and winning it, but obviously that will give you enough knowledge to build a business on top of that. So
I don't like doing this, but I'm still going to state it. So we see ourselves as India's Lockheed Martin. So when you see NASA doing a mission, sending something to the moon, it usually is NASA outsourcing 90% of that to Lockheed Martin, which figures out the entire program, the sourcing, the management and all of that. So that's kind of where we see ourselves.
The reason I'm probing is you might have some investors here, and if they want to do
Absolutely.
that, you need to be
Absolutely.
convincing enough
So
that why they should put money
We'd love
in.
to come back next Friday. Gopal missed this session. I think he's here next Friday. So we'd love to come back next Friday and Saturday and spend time with folks who are interested in talking more.
So, Lakshmi, to you, while India has really the largest number of entrepreneurs and a great market, we are never the country which is a land of opportunities which US has been. So, specific to areas like these, which are long shot opportunities, what can the country as a whole do? What can people do? Some of us have talked about crowdfunding as an opportunity to fund opportunities like these, but what are your thoughts on that?
I'll go back to the simple premise that I mentioned. Identify the right leader, take a leadership position in any of the new areas, any of the new sciences that we have. Genetics, for example. Great deal of work is being done there. We have some fantastic researchers. I think the National Center for Biological Sciences, again located in Bangalore, partly private funded, partly government funded, is a great institution that's building capability. There are a lot of startups there. So that's an area that can give us unique leading edge capability in the area of genetics, material science, nanotechnology. There are so many developments that are taking place. So what is it that we need to do is to identify these type of individuals who are wacky, like Rahul, who have the capability in specific areas, inspire them, fund them, connect them to the research institutions and the talent that we have in this country, and just give them a free hand. Magic gets created. That's the way it is. Look at a place like Bangalore or Chennai. There are so many different research institutions. There are IIT. All the institutions here in Chennai have in some form or the other been involved in our space program, in our nuclear program, in any of the scientific programs. Institutions that have been set up by the government, the ISAs, the IIITs, IITs, bulk of the research is contributing to progress of both science and engineering. So those who are interested can connect these research institutions so that they collaborate. Right now, the collaboration among all these research institutions is very minimal. It's all very, very tactical. But give them a goal, give them a vision, tell them this is what we want to accomplish. Tell them if we want to be the leaders in nanotechnology or biomedicine. And these are the research institutions that the government is going to seed fund. Now you collaborate. I'm quite positive that will lead to magic. That will lead to all these people collaborating with a single-minded passion and vision to achieve one common goal. Right now, that driving goal isn't there. Each one of these institutions and individuals are pursuing their own goals, much smaller in nature because they are limited by the size of their institution. But if you put all these institutions together, their goal will also be audacious, and there are enough people to support and fund those initiatives.
So we have here two brilliant minds with, we've had audacious goals. So I'm going to do a bit of a rapid fire session just to get their perspective on some thoughts, some points. So, no, you too. When it comes to hiring, experience or youth? Rapid fire means Rahul.
Today, youth.
Attitude.
Yeah? Experience or youth?
Attitude.
Attitude. Where do you put your money, person or idea?
Person.
Idea.
What is more important to business, money or competency?
Competency.
Competency.
To be successful, you need to be an optimist or a realist?
Optimist.
Optimist.
If you had a chance, if you had to choose, ambition or talent?
Ambition.
Ambition.
Space exploration, a priority now or later?
Now.
I think about time. It's been a while.
Who has done better in space, Russia or US?
US.
Is that a trick question?
No.
US, obviously.
Okay. If you had the opportunity to colonize, Moon or Mars?
Moon.
Mars.
Alien life, yes or no?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Finally, your favorite movie, Koi Mil Gaya or E.T.?
Apollo 13.
Martian. Martian.
Martian. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for being here. I really appreciate all of you landing up this evening, sharing your time with us. And of course, Rahul, thank you so much. And both of you have traveled all the way from Bangalore to share this evening with us and share your story and the successes you've had. Wish you all the very best. Lakshmi, as always, you were great. Thank you so much for being here and sharing your thoughts. And hope to see you all at the next event, which is going to be our first year celebration, which is on August 1st. Yeah, maybe. I thought there was enough. Okay, 3 questions from the audience. So one question at a time. So we will.
One becomes two. I mean, we consider when you try to start this off, what was the support we got from the bank was because of the security concerns. 2, how much of indigenous content is there in your hardware, and what stage are you in? You said 6 to 9 months to take off.
I thought you said 2 questions. You made it 4, almost. But very, very quickly, I think starting off, obviously, when this was a concept and there 4, 5, 6 people trying to say we're going to go to the moon, there's just so much value that the government can give you other than a little bit of a patient hearing once, maybe twice. Which is why we did not approach ISRO for the first couple of years till we had something that we could show as a plan. After that, we've engaged with them, we've engaged with Antariksh ISRO and continue to do that going forward. Your second question was indigenous content. There is media in the room. The design, the team, the integration, the qualification, and the flight is entirely Indian. That is part of the integration. So a lot of the components are bought out off the shelf. So the engines are Japanese, the sensors are European and American, so on and so forth. So we've imported a lot of components, but the entire spacecraft is Indian. It's built and integrated out of Jakur. We're happy to invite folks to come visit.
Yeah. Just one question here. Because you're doing it privately, do you have a significant cost advantage? Let's assume, how much would this cost if ISRO did it on their own? So, I mean, what I'm trying to find out is, are you, because you are a startup and, you're sort of building up from scratch, would you be a leaner system than ISRO? And what would it cost if ISRO, if you say 500 crore is the budget for this event, so what would it be if ISRO did it on their own?
I'm not sure I can answer all those questions, but let me take a stab at it. And this is purely from the way that companies are organized. So remember the days before Airtel landline was there? It was only BSNL. To get a landline was an effort. So competition was good, and competition increased service levels and stuff like that. So it's just the way that private and government organizations are structured, which brings about a certain amount of efficiency. Are we leaner than ISRO? I would say that's not an apples to apples comparison. So to say that, were both of them given the same problem statement and they solved the same or built the same thing? No, that's not the case. So I won't want to comment on how long or how much would it cost ISRO. But what I can say is, as a startup, you look at, I mean, need is the mother of invention. You invent stuff because there is a constraint on a resource, and you try to do things differently over there. So I'll just leave it at that. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
1 year.
Uncharted territory is very new. Do you see any of the challenges on the go forward basis?
Yes. Uncharted territory is obviously something that anybody who's trying to do something new would end up facing, especially when it is a secure or a private priority kind of a sector, is a strategic sector. So if anybody tries to do anything with atomic energy, anybody tries to do anything with defense, with space, automatically there is far greater scrutiny the moment they start taking you seriously. So yeah, I think the scrutiny is there. Having said that, it's there for the right reasons. We need to jump through extra hoops, but for the right reasons. So that's absolutely fine with us.
And hopefully this will enable policy making in this. So folks who follow next will already have policy in place and jump through less hoops.
So I must bring up my favorite example over here, in case I did not bring it up in the presentation, which is, so we see ourselves as the 1983 Cricket World Cup team. 2-bit team with probably 1.5 people over there who really have a name or can do something, beat the mighty West Indies twice in 2 weeks, and win the final on a 183 score or a 179 score. Today we're a cricketing superpower because we won then, not because Dhoni hit a 6 in 2011.
Well said.
I'll just add one thing to this is, Rahul said there were 30 teams to start with. Today there are only 5 teams left in the competition. 2 American, 1 Israeli, the Japanese and us. The Japanese are flying aboard our spacecraft. So they can't land before us, for sure. The 2 American teams are flying aboard. Their rocket launcher is something that hasn't been tested. I mean, I'm sure they could, but it hasn't been tested in the past. We're flying aboard one of the safest and the most effective rocket launchers in the world. So we genuinely believe this competition is between us and the Israelis. So there's a very high likelihood we would be the first team to do this. SpaceX.
Okay, we'll have 2 more questions and then we'll have to...
To compete with ISRO,
I think they're too big.
Yeah, so that was a very interesting blog that Elon Musk wrote about, competing with NASA. So Elon Musk or SpaceX is what it is today on account of, some $3.5 billion worth of contracts they got from NASA. And today they're trying to say that they will be able to land a spacecraft or maybe a human on Mars ahead of NASA. So end of the day, the private sector is an enabling ecosystem. The main space agencies are scientific organizations. ISRO had to get into engineering because of the embargo. Nobody would sell them a sun sensor or a star sensor, so they had to make their own. If they have an opportunity as a core principle, it's about science. And the industry is about enabling that science, not necessarily doing the science. So I don't see a LHC happen in the private domain, but would the components be built for it in the private domain? Absolutely. So I don't see us competing with the ISRO. I see us as being part of an enabling ecosystem.
Rajesh, give a chance to Padma.
Yeah, 2 more questions. Padma and then Shrikar. Yeah, 1 second, Padma.
Thank you. I was about to say it's easier to get to the moon than ask a question here. Or at least wait for your right
Politically
turn.
correct answers. I think that's a slightly challenging part, yes.
Well, I have a question for the lady here. What made you get into this? Didn't you know there was enough craziness around and you had to stay away from it? That is one. I mean, we are credited with a little bit more wisdom and sense than that. My second question to you is, what is your role in this big mission?
I got sucked into it. I had no clue what I was getting into. Like I said, I'm one of those perfect examples of people who didn't even have the passion to start with. Growing up, I was terrible at science, did not enjoy math, and yet here I could do the tech presentation by myself. So for me, what pulled me in was truly the audacity of this. What brought me to work every day, and I started volunteering at Team Indus for 2 hours a day, and for 2 days a week, and now I do 7 days a week and 15 hours a day. So,
Unofficially.
Sorry?
Unofficially.
Unofficially, absolutely, I'm still volunteering.
Unofficially.
And it was just to see that the team was that time Rahul and 4 young, straight out of college engineers, and to see that they had the determination and the complete confidence that they were going to go to the moon was something that was awe-inspiring, and that's what got me to be a part of this. There was a time, so when I joined, I was the only, and I still am, the only non-technical person in the entire team. So I handled everything that was non-technical to start with. So my primary role today is marketing and outreach to make sure that this truly becomes every Indian and her Indian ka moonshot. I do handle HR somewhere along the way when there's time, but it's marketing and outreach largely.
Shrika.
Maybe I missed this, but have you named your rover yet?
Yeah, so any quiz question, anyone knows our rover's name? Come on, nobody's watched any videos on us? Anything? Our rover is called ECA, E-C-A. Any guesses what it stands for? Number one, no. ECA is an acronym. Ek choti si asha. So that's what she stands for. And she's a she.
Okay, on that count,
That answers your question. In short, she's a she.
on that count, we wrap up the evening. Just wanted to share with you the next event on August 1st. True son of the soil, Shiv Nadar is talking to us about Beyond Business. It's going to be a fabulous event, moderated by Mr. Srinivasan, who is his childhood or early days friend. And we also have another guest with us for the same evening. So please make sure you're going to get here early enough and get your seats, because that's one day where you'll not find too many empty seats. So look forward to seeing you all on the 1st, and thank you so much for being here this evening. Thank you.
I'd like to do one small thing more, please. Thank you for you to come up. We'd like to thank Mr. Lakshmi Narayan for being such a huge supporter. This is, can you open it for me? This is a medal that we received when we won the milestone prize. They gave us a medal saying we've qualified. We'd like Venki to please give it to Mr. Lakshmi Narayan from us.